Nurture and Support begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Nurture and Support. This is episode 5. I am Mel at Karmic9 on Twitter, and with me as always is Kelly.
Hi everybody, Kelly Toole at Kelly Toole, THUL on Twitter. Glad to be back, Mel. All excited to go through some more recommendations.
Yes, absolutely. So just to recap a bit, everyone can reach us at nurtureandsupport.net. To send us your recommendations on anything or any comments you might have. If you've read any of the books or listened to any of the artists that we talk about or have any comments on the recommendations that we give out, we would love to hear your feedback and hit us up at the website.
You know what actually might be fun is for us to try and keep track of our financial impact to the economy. How many new books have we sold to keep a running total? And this is what Absolutely. We're doing to help the U.S. economy.
We are doing our share. I do more than my share. I buy way too many books. So I think I'm going to start out this time, and my first recommendation is a series called The Broken Empire by one Mark Lawrence. It's got 3 books in it: The Prince of Thorns, The King of Thorns, and The Emperor of Thorns. And it is essentially an anti-hero story. I love anti-heroes, and so something about this book just really resonated with me. I really liked it. It's the story of a boy named Jorg Ancrath. He's the prince, and his mother and his little brother are killed essentially by his uncle, and his father really doesn't do very much about it. And I think he's 9 years old when this happens, and he just gets this burning desire for revenge. And that's what the entire series is about, is him taking revenge essentially for the death of his mother and his little brother. And he's a very, very, very bad person. He's a quintessential anti-hero. You really don't have any sympathy for him. You find out some particular things about why he is the way that he is, but he becomes a criminal and takes up with a band of basically killers and thieves and sets out to rule the world. And this is a story, essentially, of how he does that. In the author's own words, when he's asked what the book is about, he says, Prince of Thorns is about a charming, dangerous, and amoral boy growing into a charming, dangerous, and amoral young man. On the journey, he cuts down pretty much everything and everyone who gets in his way, and he's rather creative when it comes to the business of killing. But it's essentially the story of Jorg. It's a fantasy book with a little bit of science thrown in, but it's about him. This isn't about some prince going out and saving some princess and redeeming himself in the midst of this story. This is a story of a very bad young man who sets out on a plan to get revenge for a good reason. People killed his mother and his little brother, and the bad things that he does to get there, and ultimately what all of that brings. May or may not have a happy ending, depending on what you consider to be a happy ending.
So is this set in any kind of our contemporary history or a
fantasy
world?
It's a fantasy. It's a fantasy, but there's a little twist in there. It's got a little bit of some science thrown in, and I don't want to throw too many spoilers out.
Gotcha.
About what happens with the story. It is essentially a fantasy. There's a little bit of magic thrown in there, but there's some science as well. It won't take people very long to figure out what the twist is, but I don't want to give it away because when I read it the first time, I was like, oh, I get it. So I don't want to take that away from anybody. There's a little twist. It won't take you very long to figure out in the first book. So I highly recommend it.
So on the Walter White Heisenberg scale, where would you place this anti-hero?
Well, no one can ever replace Walter. Walter is pretty bad, but Jorg lives in a slightly different time, and Jorg does some really, really bad things. He really does. He's a child when he does most of these things, and most of the really bad stuff is going to happen in the first book. If you can get through the bad things that he does in the very first book, you'll make it through the series, no problem. But I had to keep reading the first book just to find out if they were ever going to give me a redeeming answer as to why I was reading a book about this horrible person. And I got enough of an answer to that I found his story compelling. But there's just something about the way the story is written, that it's not a story about saving this world. It's not a story about saving the kingdom or fighting a dragon or doing anything like that. It's a story about this one person. The story is Jorg. It's his life, and it's what he does. And there was just something so compelling to me about that. It did remind me a lot of Breaking Bad. Just in that Breaking Bad was about Walter White and his effect on the people around him. And this is similar in that this book is completely, the story is told by Jorg. It is his story, and you only incidentally see the effect that the bad things that he does, that it has on the people around him and the world around him. But it's not to say that it's a completely hopeless story, because obviously you have to have something that you're working toward. But that's always the question: is will he ever get the revenge that he's looking for, or is that even really what he's looking for?
No Sir Saul of Goodman in the show in the book.
No.
rushing in to help York.
Yeah. No.
Oh, wow. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. He's got his own little band of quirky characters. He very, very quickly sets in with a group of, like I said, thieves and murderers. These are people who kill people just because they're bored. And they do it slow and painfully. They're not good people. And in his rise to power, these people also gain more power because they're with him. So it's interesting, and you just have to read it to find out why. It's not going to speak to everybody. It's probably not going to speak to a lot of people the way that it did to me. But the book has been gaining a lot of popularity, or the series has. In fact, he just won a Stabby Award on Reddit.
Oh, yeah. How cool is that?
On Reddit for, I believe it was Emperor of Thorns, which is the last book, which just came out a couple months ago. So cool. That's an accomplishment.
Yes, indeed. A Stabby. I wonder what those look like.
He posted a picture on his blog of of a knife with the engraving on it. And I was like, wow, they actually send you a knife? Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, let me see. I had a quote from one of the books I wanted to read. Oh, yeah, this is what he says before one of the big battles. He says, "Don't look to me to save you. Don't think I will not spend you. Run if you have the wit. Pray if you have the soul. Stand your ground if courage is yours, but don't follow me. Follow me and I will break your heart." I love that. It's one of my favorite quotes from the whole book.
Very cool. Little Gus Fringy there.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah, he's a character. You can't help but feel some sympathy for him. You do find out in the course of the story reasons why he is the way that he is, but they never ask you to forgive what he's done because of those things. He's not asking for forgiveness. He knows he's a monster, and he has a goal, and he's going to complete that goal no matter what gets in his way. And he doesn't care if it's good or bad. He's going to do it, and he doesn't ask anyone to forgive him, and you have to respect him for that. So the whole series covers him from the ages of about 9 to 21. And it's a self-contained series, so you don't have to worry about, oh, there's already 3 books, and by the time I get to the 3rd book, there'll be 3 more books in the series. The story itself is over. So there's 3 books. That story is done. Mark Lawrence is starting another series in the same world, but Jorg's story is done. So you don't have to worry about getting behind. Jorg and Crass history has been written.
Excellent. Very good. That sounds really cool. And so I'll jump in with my first one, which has many parallels and some pretty strong distinctions from yours. Because mine, I also have a trilogy recommendation. Trilogy recommendation where there's lots of bad things that happen in it. But unlike the self-contained part, this plugs into a much bigger world and in a big way. And so my recommendation is several trilogies have been put out by Brian Herbert, who's Frank Herbert's son. Frank Herbert wrote Dune. Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson, and they have written a number of Dune-related books. And I've been a big Dune fan forever. How deep did you go into that series, Mel?
I think I only read Dune. I've always planned on completing it, but I never have, and then the further I get behind, the less likely it becomes that I catch up. But we've talked about this before. I think you've told me this was really good.
These are really good because if you've just read, because there's just so much in Dune. I mean, it's such a vast world that he paints a picture of, and so much back, or there's just such a rich and textured environment that book itself. The thing I love about these, and the 3 books are called the Butlerian Jihad, the Machine Crusade, and the Battle of Corrin. And these are prequels. These are good prequels. These aren't like Star Wars prequels. These are like actually good. And if you're a Dune nerd at all, I would think these would make such fantastic movies, just in terms of the action and the story. But if you kind of remember from Dune, they have these guys called mentats, who are human computers, because there was they keep talking about the machine war, and they had a big battle with the intelligence of the machines, and so they kind of got rid of the machines, and now they had human computers to do all their thinking for them, and all that. And of course you had the guild, and the guild masters with the guild that would do the full time and space for travel and all that. All of that backstory, the Fremen, how the Fremen came to be on Dune and what they were about, how space folding came into being about, how the Harkonnens and the Atreides, which are the 2 big families that are warring factions, how they became that, are all addressed in excellent pacing through these 3 books. And it features a lot initially on these Cymex, they're called, which are the artificial intelligent beings that kind of run the show and have created the synchronized worlds where they kind of demand, and then the humans trying to war against them. And it is just unbelievable. There's some harrowing moments there's parts where I've got pretty thick skin in reading stuff, but there were a couple moments in this one where I was like, really? That just happened? That's pretty horrible. There's what's become a self-aware sentient robot called Aramis, who features heavily throughout these. Not a good guy, not a good robot, not a good whatever he is. He's bad, and he has some issues. The interesting thing, there's just tons of stuff in there, but one of the things that I got the most excited about was the Harkonnens, who by the time we get to Dune and start reading about Dune, they're just this kind of disliked royal family, bad reputation, just bad actors all around. In the prequel, actually, the Vladimir Harkonnen features pretty heavily in most of the trilogy. He's really the hero. The Harkonnen family was on a much different path for a long time and began to intersect, and he and actually, I can't remember what the Atreides' first name was, but he was close friends with the Atreides through most of the book, and then some things happen at the end. But if you love Dune, these are a tremendous read because you can just start to see little hints that, okay, I'm going to start giving you a layer and another layer about the guild and spice and how that works, and how all the different mechanics and all the different kinds of products that they talked about in Dune. You kind of get the backstory of everyone, and then running through the whole thing is this idea of the folks who will become the Fremen eventually on Dune, how they became what they are.
That's cool.
And so it is. They're all page turners. They're really good. I've started on, so I definitely do this trilogy, and I think you will love it. I've started through. They've done another 3 trilogies, which is House Atreides, House of Harkonnen, and House Corrin, which would be the Emperor's family. Is the House Corrin. I've started House Atreides. It's pretty good, but I love these 3. So I'm not a big book guy, as you know, and I ripped through these because these were excellent.
So if I wanted to read those without having finished reading all of the Children of Dune and the Emperor of Dune, if I hadn't read all of those, but I went back and I read these books first, would I be okay?
You'd be
since they're prequels?
Fine. Yeah. I think you'll be perfectly fine because, thinking about, I liked so I loved the book Dune, I loved. And the subsequent ones, Children of Dune and all the Heretics of Dune, all those came out. I liked those as well, but none of them were as good to me as Dune was.
Right.
And Dune laid all the stuff. Basically, these prequels really seemed bound and determined to say, well, if you read Dune, we're going to give you the backstory about every little factor of Dune. Okay. And so you're not going to miss anything. If you've read Dune and kind of remember a lot of the basics around in Dune, the Bene Gesserits and all that kind of stuff, you get all that backstory.
Cool.
So I would definitely recommend that trilogy.
Yeah, I'm gonna add that to my list. We've talked about that before. I really need to know more about spice because the spice must flow.
Yes, it must, and we learn why, and it's all good. And it's you kind of, when you saw Lucas do Star Wars, you saw him try and connect some dots to say, okay, here's why this is that way, or here's why this is that, and it kind of made sense, and it did it. But this is just done so well. It's just it doesn't feel, none of it feels forced. It's like, oh, well, yeah, okay, yeah, that's a really rich. I get that now.
It was always such a beautiful world that Herbert created there. It was always, there was so much to work with there, so much story to tell.
Absolutely, and the Cybeks they're not good machines. They're bad machines.
Bad machines.
bad
robots.
Machines. Yes, bad robots, definitely.
That's cool. I'm gonna definitely add that to my list then. And those are by his son, Brian. What was his name?
Brian. Yeah, Brian Herbert, and then Kevin J. Anderson is the co-author of them. But yeah, it's my son, so yeah, they're good. And then perhaps in the future I'll give a report out on the House Atreides, Harkonnen, and Corrin, but I got to actually get through those.
Yeah. Well, I've read some other stuff that Kevin J. Anderson has done as well. He's excellent. So that sounds like a great team to be doing those books. I'll be checking those out. So I think that comes back to my turn, and y'all might want to point and laugh, but I'm going to give you a music recommendation that is not Alice Cooper. I'm sorry, it's not.
That recommendation is coming, but I'm working on it. It's got to be so right.
Oh, my little music recommendation here is for an artist named Adam Hurst. He plays the cello, and I love his music. It's so beautiful. I have a thing about cello music. I just absolutely adore cellos. But this isn't your classical cello music. He does what you would consider kind of world music. They brand it as a Eastern meets Western cello music, and to me it sounds like world travel to me. And since I'm trapped in the large state of Texas that I very rarely ever leave, it sounds all very exotic to me. His website is worldcello.com, and you can see some of his videos and listen to some of his music there. He just put out a new CD called Nightfall, which I've been listening through, and might be my favorite CD of his. Before that, he put one out a few years ago called Ritual, which up to this point has been my favorite one for pretty much loving every song on the CD. And I wish I could play a clip, but we haven't figured out quite how to do that yet, but we will someday.
Without going to jail or something.
Yeah, we don't want to go to jail because we really can't afford a lawyer. Saul is not going to come down here to save us, so
No.
We'll try. In particular, one of the songs on the new CD Nightfall that I really love is called Beneath, and it's kind of an Arabic sound to it with the cello music. And there's a video on YouTube, or you can access all of his videos through his website, worldcello.com. And I highly recommend it. I just want everybody to go give his stuff a listen, because I, a few years ago, didn't know who he was. And he was recommended to me by a friend on Twitter. And so I am passing on that recommendation to everyone here to check out Adam Hurst and his beautiful cello music. Some people always tell me, oh, that stuff puts me to sleep. But after a long day, it's very soothing, and some of it's uplifting. Some of his stuff sounds kind of gypsy-ish, but it always sounds like something from a Spice Bazaar to me, so I love it. But it's not Alice Cooper.
Well, I know you may be a little shocked, but the cello section of my music library is a little light, and so so this is good, because this is I'm definitely gonna actually do like diversity of music, although there's still one bright shining star above all music, which we'll talk about in some future show. But I do like different flavors of stuff. So that's definitely gonna check it out on YouTube here first, and then so I'm assuming I can do the iTunes thing and
his music. There are links on his website to every place imaginable that you can get his music. Though I did notice he didn't have a Spotify link. I think all of his albums are up on Spotify, which you can listen to for free. You do have to make a Spotify account, but Spotify is a whole nother thing. But I'll put a link up when we put this episode up. You can listen to the entire Nightfall album on Spotify for free, and if you like it, please throw him a few bucks and go buy it from one of the many stores it's available at. I will warn everybody, though, if you want to buy the physical CD, I suggest you get it from CD Baby, where it's a lot cheaper than it is on Amazon for some reason. But if you're an MP3 buyer, don't worry about it. You can get it anywhere for pretty much the same price. But the physical CD is a lot cheaper from cdbaby.com.
So which are you, Mel? Are you more MP3 buying based now, or do you still like to get the physical copy as well, or does it vary?
I usually get MP3s. It just depends on. Sometimes there are specials when you get the physical CD. If there's add-ons, like they include concert footage, or if there's add-ons for a physical CD, I'll still get those and then just rip them. But nowadays, more and more, like Amazon is more and more, if you're buying the physical CD, they'll go ahead and give you the MP3s when you buy it. But I'm getting short on space from my massive book and music collections, so I tend to go MP3 these days, unless it's something really, really special.
I tend to still be more a physical copy guy, mostly because I can add to my shrine to Alice downstairs and place a physical thing, and the next thing buy the candles and photos and stuff.
Right.
But I did the Tony O'Kay Dick Dale version. That's an MP3 only purchase for me, so I'll mix it up a little bit. But when I can get the physical copy, I kind of like that. So.
Right, and I used to up until just a few years ago, when the DRM thing got settled, and you can buy the MP3s DRM free now. So since that's been settled and you can buy them and do what you need to do with them, I do tend to buy more MP3s nowadays than I do physical CDs, but I still do buy physical CDs. My Jonathan Colton one, I bought the CD. So.
Yeah, and fun trivia for all those nurture and support fans out there, our intro bump. The music on that did not come from an MP3, did not originally come from an MP3, did not come from a CD, but actually came from, yes, a cassette tape.
Oh my God, what are those?
Yeah, believe it or not, that was, which I need to probably make sure I get all of that off those cassette tapes because they're going to disintegrate, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, I don't even own a cassette player anymore.
I have one left, and it's to get those recorded. That's the only reason I need it at this point.
Yeah. So. Yeah, you need to pull those off and digitize those.
Yeah. And speaking of that, that takes me into my final recommendation for tonight, which is if you type waybackmachine.org, you'll get to this site. What will reconcile to almost immediately is something that's called archive.org. But you're familiar with the Wayback Machine, Mel? Have you?
Yeah. I know, I've looked at it before.
Yeah, so, in the spirit of it, you mentioned this, I think, on, maybe I think it was actually in the intro to the show, we talked about it, is that the Internet's a big place where you can waste tons and tons of time.
Yep.
I am giving you a site that you will waste hours upon hours on. Archive.org is much more than the Wayback. The Wayback Machine itself, which was originally just going to be my recommendation, is just the funnest thing in the world, I think, to go into, because you can go back, put in any website you like, a graph below that will come up after a search on the name showing activities of updates to the page over years. So you can bring up IBM.com. And then from today all the way back to there, so you can go back and look at what did IBM's first website look like? What did Microsoft's first website look like? You can see that, and then you can see the progression over time. So it's basically got screenshots of websites throughout time. It's just kind of a fascinating thing. And oh my God, when this internet thing started, people had pretty interesting ideas on how to create a website and what people wanted to see.
Yeah. So
you can lots of animated GIFs out there from the old days and big blocky colors. But oh my goodness, it was it's some pretty interesting thing. But it's a fascinating thing to just kind of dig around, look at old sites, and I'll do that. And so that in itself is enough of a recommendation for me to waste time and be fun. But when you go to this thing now, and I was unaware they had kind of fully broadened this out, this is intended to be an archive of about anything you can imagine. So they've got the web tab, and that's all the Wayback Machine stuff. But they've got video, and in video that includes movies. And in movies that includes, yes, Plan 9 from Outer Space is available for free off archive.org, so you can watch it, which is the right price to pay. So huge number of videos. So a lot of the old 60s stuff, you could probably go back and find that. Text, books, actually, so there's a number of books available on there. Audio, I don't think our show's made it yet, but they do have audio on there. And then one that I've got to play with a little bit more, and I don't know if you've had a chance to, is they have a software section, and they've really tried to simplify the emulation side of things, because what they want to do is to have people who want to experience, remember the Atari 2600 experience, or the, I'm a Commodore Amiga guy from way back when, so the Commodore Amiga games and all those types of things, is that they've set up a pretty good environment for you to go in, and they've archived software, so old versions of games, and so they're still roughing the edges out on that a little bit, so some of them won't have sound, but like Donkey Kong, all the Namco stuff, it's all out there. So old video games, books, movies. In the audio section, they also have a whole section of live recordings of bands. Sadly, no Alice Cooper. I checked, but. So some of the bigger names are there, but there's a ton of stuff out there. And then for some reason, the Smashing Pumpkins have over 1,000 recorded live shows on the site. So if you're a Smashing Pumpkins fan, you've got a lot of listening ahead of you, because there's over 1,000 live recordings, and it's the full concert. So if you want to waste time, and this is a nurture and support recommendation that's free, because you can go in and just waste your time on all these for free.
Absolutely.
And do some things. So I want to definitely play more with the emulation stuff, because I some of the early Atari stuff was kind of fun, and so it'll be kind of interesting to go back and do it. So, but it looks like they're just doing their best to archive everything they can.
Yeah, that's cool. And that's something that really needs to be done. I'm glad that I know I've heard of archive.org. I've heard people talking about it, but I've never gone to check it out. So I'll have to go poke around in there. And I had a book recommendation that would definitely go with that, but we'll have to save that for next show. We'll throw out archive.org again.
Sounds good. And with that, we have our first listener email.
Yay!
To the nertandsup@gmail.com account. You can tweet us either at Mel's Karmic9, Kelly Toole on Twitter. You can hit either of us there. You can tweet Nurture and Support, which I believe is Nertandsup, NURTANDSUPP on Twitter, or you can email us at nertandsup@gmail.com. And if you've got recommendations for us and want to send them our way, we'll do what we can to kind of fit them in. And from what I have to view and consider the number one Nurture and Support fan out there, Dan LaRock. We appreciate Dan's support. He's actually reviewed our podcast on iTunes. We're very appreciative. Anyone else that wants to do that, we would be equally appreciative. Reviews help. But he wrote in, so I'm just going to go ahead and read his email. Hey guys, just wanted to drop a line and recommend a couple of things from a guy named John, and I'm sorry, John Anileo, Anealio. We'll have the links on the site, so you don't have to rely on me too much. John's a musician and blogger. You guys may already know his stuff. I think you had a little bit of familiarity, Mel, right?
Yeah.
I didn't, so this was new to me. His songs are mainly acoustic, but very nerdy in nature. He loves Let Your Geek Flag Fly. It's his summertime anthem. And his tracks are available at johnalieo.com, which we'll, again, have on the site. He does a podcast with Patrick Hester called Functional Nerds. They talk about music and books. Hey, that's what we do. They should stop. Music and books, and have guest authors on. Well, we don't do that, so I guess they go on.
But if you're an author and you'd like to guest.
Yeah, we would be willing to. Yeah, just drop us, So maybe Brian Herbert's listening, and he'll join us next time. He's had on Chuck Wingding and Mur Lafferty, including those couple of authors. They touch on the business side of things, like publishing and monetizing your work. All this stuff is great from John. And that's all for now. Thanks, Dan. And then he gave us a link to his iTunes and his Twitter account and all that. So we'll include that in the write-up for the show. For there, and thanks very much, Dan, for our premier mailbag item. Very cool.
Yay! Thank you so much, Dan. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I think to close the show, as Mel and I have been talking, the hours and hours of preparation we both put in for each of these shows, and decided to tack on one other last little bonus item for you folks as far as it's a recommendation show. And so it's a show that's also, Mel and I are pretty big Twitter fans, and I thought it might be nice to each show include at the end of it a suggestion on, it's kind of our version of a Follow Friday, just a recommended someone you might want to follow, and just a kind of a brief snippet why. And Mel, I'll let you start.
Okay. Mine this week is Tor.com, and that's at Tor, TORDOTCOM. And they're a book website initially, but they do all sorts of geek, nerdy, television stuff. They cover everything. They've got, I don't know who's in charge of that website, but they don't just cover books. They cover every single thing out there. They do rewatches of Buffy that they do write-ups about, their way into Sherlock. The BBC Sherlock, I should say, like I am. They obviously tweet about authors, but science fiction, movies, television shows, the whole gamut of geekdom, nerddom, all the popular pop culture stuff that might be on the internet, they cover. So it's not just books. And I get a lot of good recommendations from them, and if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that I retweet a whole lot of their stuff. So I thought I would throw it out there for all of you to go follow them yourselves, so you don't have to wait on me.
And this is why Twitter is the noblest of all social networks, is that I'm going to basically follow them right now. And so this is a nice, easy recommendation to jump right on and do. And I will follow that recommendation with my first one, which is Annie Colbert. and she's at ANNIECOLBERT, Annie Colbert. A lot of her stuff syndicates over to Mashable. She also runs a Twitter account called @watercooler. And allow me to read you her Twitter bio. Anti-9-to-5er, urban hippie, writing fool, life hitchhiker, travel addict, Muppet fanatic, @Mashable, viral content editor, pouring drinks at water cooler. So she works she intersects with Mashable and this water cooler account as well. Tends to go to those platforms a little bit more now versus using Twitter as her primary way, and so you kind of catch her stuff a little bit more on those platforms. But she tweets with some decent regularity, and it's really good. She's doing viral content for Mashable, and Mashable does pretty well with spotting some good things. She's funny and always adds a little bit of adds a smile to my timeline when she's on there and something comes out, because it's always something that's really, really cool or funny or I like. And just a real nice person. She sent out one of her more recent tweets was a grumpy cat wishing you a very crappy Christmas from Mashable, and all that kind of good stuff. So she's a fun one. I've been following her for a very long time and enjoy it. So that'll be my recommendation for this week.
That's a good one. I think I saw that grumpy cat. You probably retweeted it, and I followed it. That's about me at Christmas time. So I think that's all we have this week. Anything else?
I'm done. If you're done.
I think we're done. So everybody check out the website at nurtureandsupport.net. Email us at nerdandsub@gmail.com. Twitter at nerdandsub. I'm at Karmic9 on Twitter, and Kelly is at KellyTHUL on Twitter. And please send us your recommendations or any nice, nurturing, and supportive comments you might have. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll get you episode 6.
Nurturing and supporting Journey.